Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Station, AM 1050, FM 102.3, and FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, iTunes, and more. I am Dr. Marissa. I'm your host, and today is a very special day. It's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and to celebrate that, I am bringing you a spotlight interview with two very important guests, Donzale Abernathy, who grew up calling Dr. King Uncle Martin, and of course, the voice, the channel, the vessel of Dr. King, my friend Gerald Rivers. But before that, you know I love to balance out all the bad news out there that you see on your TV. That's why I don't have one, with good news. That's why I go look for it. And I found 3 great stories this weekend that I wanted to share with you. So enjoy. And good morning. This is Dr. Marissa. You know me as the Asian Oprah. And you know I love to cover what's right about people, what's right about politicians, what's right about the police. And here I am this morning, and I have some people here that I'd like you to meet. So here we go. Hey, could you introduce yourself and tell me why you're here?
I'm Cecile Ramos. I'm the president of Historic Filipinotown. And a great day for distribution of food to the community, to the historic Filipinotown community. Thank you.
Absolutely. And sir?
Good morning. My name is John Bircher. I'm a commander with the LA County Sheriff. And the people doing this food drive today, it's the historic Filipinotown and also Sheriff Alex Villanueva's LASD Community Advisory Council.
Beautiful. And why is this important for you both?
Our community needs, because of this pandemic, we really need this food drive for our community.
Fabulous. And we have some friends and supporters over here saying hello.
Hi.
Yes, and this event is, where is this?
Yeah, we're at the Our Lady of Loretto, 250 Union Avenue Street, right at the heart of historic Filipinotown.
Great. And what time is this event going until?
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock? Beautiful. Anything else to add? There we go. It's wonderful. Good morning. This is Dr. Marissa. You know me as the Asian Oprah, and you know that I love to highlight and balance out all the bad news on the planet with what's good with our community, what's good with people. Today is no exception. I am here in the parking lot at the Baldwin Hills Mall at a great giveaway. It's not just food. There's a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to let the organizer tell you what's going on, and then I'm going to tell you a funny story.
All right, so in addition to the...
What's your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Dr. Cassandra Bailey. I am the coordinator of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. And in addition to food giveaway, we are also offering free vaccinations of all forms for adults and children, as well as COVID testing. We have bag luggage that we're giving away to girls between the ages of 14 and 28, and backpacks to children, school-aged children. We also have LAPD here to provide information on jobs.
Thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to give you Dr. Marissa's Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award.
Thank you very much.
And on this side, you obviously see she's in uniform. She came up to me and said, "Do you get your nails done at QT Nails?" We actually were there together yesterday, so I dragged her over here because she's obviously volunteering, and I want you to explain what your organization is doing to help here.
I know that jobs are important right now, and bridging that gap between the community and basically the LAPD. So we're here basically answering any question that you might have, and also giving you a job opportunity if you are open to having a job with us.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So this is what I do at the end of every show. Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live in Baldwin Hills, asking you to remember it's all about balance and to have the best day ever. Perfect. That's a wrap. Thank you. And good afternoon. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live. You know me as the Asian Oprah, and you know that I love to balance out all the bad news out there with good news and people that are doing good things on the planet. And I have here someone who's doing that today with a great event. Would you introduce yourself and tell us why we're here?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here. My name's Dave Magrin. I'm the Executive Director of the Slave to Nothing Foundation. We're attached to In-N-Out Burger. We serve this tremendous organization that is so generous and really cares for the communities where we have restaurants. So, we're in 7 states, and what we're trying to do is bring awareness and financial resources to people who are really battling both substance abuse and human trafficking. And today, as part of January being National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, we're here with this incredible car show, a cruise, a program, lots of fun, but at the same time, we're really tackling what is a very difficult and important and serious cause and issue.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so you're raising funds. It's called Slave to None. So I got the distinction now. It's slave, not just human trafficking, but also slave to
right,
drug
slave
addiction.
to nothing. That's exactly right. We have 2 causes. One is to fight substance abuse, and the other is to fight human trafficking. And again, today's event is specifically focused on the human trafficking piece. We've got a lot of great people here. All of the money that we raise, both today and all year round, goes directly to the nonprofits who are helping rescue people from trafficking.
So you're sort of like the mothership, and you send out the money that you raise to those local organizations.
Well, we have a very generous organization and a lot of generous customers, and we feel very responsible to be good stewards of those financial resources. And as a result, everything that we raise goes directly to those nonprofits who are really doing the difficult work with those trafficking survivors.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to give you guys Dr. Marissa's Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award. I don't give that to everybody, but thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so
and
much.
I do this at the end of every show.
Okay.
Could you do this with me?
Sure.
Peace in,
Peace in.
peace out, world peace through inner peace.
Nice.
And that is definitely the message that you're helping. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for being here.
Of course. You can look all those up if you want to. Hashtag Be the Change and be parts of organizations that are really doing great things to help those who need a little bit of temporary help. And when we come back, as promised, a spotlight interview with Donzale Abernathy and Gerald Rivers celebrating Martin Luther Jr. King Day today. So stay tuned to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And we're back. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News radio station, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere, including my YouTube channel, where you can not only get my past 617 shows, you can also get my red carpet playlist and celebrity interviews with people like Halle Berry, John Travolta, and Quincy Jones. So please do free subscribe, and you'll also get an alert every 8 a.m. weekday mornings for this show about hope and happiness. And in addition to being Martin Luther King Day, it's also Blue Monday. And I got asked to write an article for PepTalk, a speaker organization in the United Kingdom. So if you want to look that up, it will be all over my social media today with tips on how you can stay out of Blue Monday. And now, as promised, here's a great spotlight interview with someone who actually grew up with Dr. King, as well as someone who embodies and shares with us not only the words, but the feeling behind Dr. King's words. Gerald Rivers. Enjoy.
So inspired to do this episode because I watched that brilliant movie, The Butler. And if you haven't seen it, you have to take your kids to go. And I was so inspired that I thought, I have to do a show about Dr. King. And I couldn't think of two better people to bring to the studio than my special guest today. On the phone, I have Ms. Donzaleigh Abernathy. She's an actress, director, and writer who began her life in the midst of the American Civil Rights Movement as the youngest daughter of its co-founder, Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, and his wife, Juanita. Raised in the public forefront of the civil rights movement, Donzaleigh attended all of the major marches and had a bird's eye view growing up in her parents' home, which was the gathering place for her father and his best friend, Martin Luther King Jr., whom Donzaleigh would know as Uncle Martin. You'll recognize her from TV shows Any Day Now, Gods and Generals, and the leading lady in HBO's award-winning Don King, Only in America, and many, many other shows. And we'll get to know more about her. So she's on the phone. And then in the studio, I'm doubly blessed to have a friend from Agape and very talented actor, Gerald Rivers. And besides acting, he's a teacher, inspirational speaker, and master drummer. In 2012, the Center for Advancement of Nonviolence recognized Gerald's work when they bestowed on him the Season for Nonviolence Local Hero Award. And as a special treat to my listeners, he's agreed to do the I Have a Dream speech on the air. So please, without further ado, would you give a warm welcome to my guest on the phone, Donzaleigh, and my guest in the studio, Gerald. Hello. Welcome, Donzaleigh.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Dr. Marissa.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. I appreciate you making room in your schedule. And Gerald, we're going to put this mic up close to you.
Thank you. Greetings, and thank you kindly for having me. It's truly an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. And Gerald, meet Donzaleigh, Gerald.
Hi, Gerald. How are you?
Hi, Donzaleigh. It's a pleasure to meet you. I actually met your dad. I went to school at Morehouse, and we were doing some research, and I had the opportunity to go and meet him. And I tell people this story because my roommate was a member of his fraternity.
Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yes, indeed. Which meant there were guys dancing with canes in my dorm room when I went to school at Morehouse. But we were doing research on SCLC and asked if we could get an interview with him, and he said you can only get an interview if you come to church. So we went to the church service, and we got there late, snuck in, sat in the back, and we went to see him after the service for this interview. And we didn't think he would notice with all the people there, but the very first thing he said was, "I saw you guys when you came in."
Oh, busted.
Oh, wow. He was incredibly observant.
Indeed, he was.
Yeah, and I mean, he knew his congregation. I mean, literally, he knew everybody. But, you know, when did this happen? I mean, I could have been in Atlanta at that point.
This would have been right around 2000?
No, we had to be before that because he died in 1990.
Oh, okay.
This would have been, I left Morehouse in 87.
Okay.
So this would have been 1990.
No, 87. It would have been 1980 or 85. if you left.
No, I left.
Okay. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm.
I was at
There's a-
Morehouse from 87 to 90.
Okay, so somewhere
And it was
between
while
there.
I was there.
So it would
somewhere
be just
between
before. It would have been just before he died. And I moved to Los Angeles in 1989.
Oh wow.
there. Okay.
So
okay.
I was at church every Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
I bet. So yeah, tell me more of your memories, because this is truly a treat, an insider perspective as a child, getting to know. I guess you called him Uncle Martin. What was that like?
Oh my God! Yeah, life was so exciting. I thought, I mean, it was violent, of course, and the threat of death was, all around.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up with Daddy and Uncle Martin, it was great. I mean, I saw them. I very seldom saw my dad without him.
Mm.
So, they would go on the road Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And then Friday night, when they'd get in town, Uncle Martin and Uncle Retta and their family would come to our house.
Wow.
Mm.
Or we'd go to their house, and my mother would make a great feast. And then on Saturdays, my sister and I would go meet Yolanda, and we'd all do ballet over at Spelman College.
Mm.
And then Daddy and Uncle Martin would take the boys to get their hair cut, and then later in the evening, we'd reconvene with the family, and we'd all play. And then Sunday, we'd go to our separate churches. We'd leave our churches on Sunday, and then I either end up at Ebenezer, or they would come to West Hunter, and then we'd all go have dinner at Pascal's, which is this, chicken restaurant, soul food restaurant on what was called Hunter Street, which is now Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And then, they'd go their separate ways and go to visit the sick after dinner. And then Sunday night, they'd come back over our house and hang out. And
So you grew up with him. I mean, basically, you grew up with his family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We all rode the same car to school every day and rode back home together. And then Uncle Martin would, on Wednesday nights when they were in town, we'd go to the Y and swim.
Oh.
That was our thing with them. And so, it was great. And it would just be the kids and their fathers, no mothers.
Mm-hmm. Was he as so I mean, I can't picture him laughing a lot.
Oh, he laughed all the time.
Did he
That's
laugh
the
all the
thing.
time? Because
Oh, he
we
was-
only see, the more serious kind of and inspirational part of him. But I had a feeling that he was a very fun-loving
From
guy,
my
right?
research and
really
study.
humorous. Like, he used to crack jokes. My mother would call it crack and fact. And he believed, though, that the image that he presented to the public was a very serious one.
Mm-hmm.
But as he had a stern face, he would say under his breath a joke to my dad. And people used to say that my father was the jovial one. I think my father was the one who smiled all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, my dad loved to smile. He had a free spirit. But Uncle Martin was, ridiculously funny, like Eddie Murphy funny.
Really?
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 I mean, he would hold court with a room, and just everybody, you'd be laughing and tears coming out of your eyes because he was so funny.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
great.
so he's-
That's great. Do you have any one of your favorite stories that maybe didn't make it into the research books? Because Gerald definitely has done his research. I feel like he probably knows, because you have to play him. I mean, you get into character.
And I've been doing that for about 30 years now.
Wow.
And so when it started, I had no idea that I would still be doing it this many decades later.
Mm-hmm.
But in my research and having met people who knew him and having met Dr. Abernathy and met his wife and met his family and met various people around the world who have wonderful stories about King, the people that knew him often talked about how funny he was and his ability to tell great jokes and sometimes interesting jokes, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But they all seemed to enjoy them.
That's great.
So he was really, really, really funny. personally, just jokes. I can't remember. I know that there was this one joke that he made about my dad praying when they were surrounded by police and they were all on their knees praying, and he said, and Ralph, he was praying with his eyes open, and something like that. But oh my God, there was just so many stories and so many experiences. I'll never forget. His daughter Yolanda was my sister's best friend, and she told Wandlin that Uncle Martin was going to be getting a little bitty TV for his birthday, because those were new on the scene, those little TVs. And so my sister told me, and I told my brother Ralph, and I'll never forget, we were going to their house on Johnson Avenue. This is before they moved to Sunset Avenue. And my brother was in my father's arms, and he wore this little car coat. I'll never forget, it was tan with chocolate brown piping. We walked up the steps because it's January, it's cool, it's cold in Atlanta. And we got to the steps of the front door, this big old Victorian house that they lived in. And Uncle Martin came to the door, and my brother just blasted, I know what you're getting for your birthday. and he was like, oh, really? What? And by that point, Yoki has arrived to the door. I don't know if Uncle Retta's there. And my brother said, a TV! And all of a sudden, it was just, I was motivated. He was excited, of course, But Yoki looked at my sister looked at me, and they both looked at me, and it was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I just felt so bad. But that was, a great birthday gift for him. And I'll never forget, shortly before Uncle Retta died, she was saying, she was like, I was telling her that story. She said, I thought I gave him the TV when we lived in Sunset. I said, no, you lived in the house on Johnson Avenue. And, it was his little birthday gathering, and it was just us. And then I'll never forget, shortly before he died, they have something called Pastor's Anniversary, and, the weeknight services. And on one of these particular weeknight services, they had it downstairs in the basement of Ebenezer. And, by that point, the civil rights movement, was sort of waning. It was more the Black Power movement. And so not that many people came, so it wasn't a service upstairs. It was a service downstairs in the basement. They had that old altar furniture. And I remember we were sitting there in the basement. There weren't that many people there, and this guy stood up to sing The Impossible Dream. Uncle Martin loved that song.
Really?
Oh, my God. He just sat there, and tears just streamed down his face. And as a little kid, when you see the adults cry, you have to cry too. And I just sobbed because I felt so badly for him because he had this dream and and he wanted so much to have a better world. And at that point, Stokely Carmichael and all of the Black Panthers and all those people were rising up, and young people were following them, and they were calling my dad and Uncle Martin Uncle Tom because they wanted to, get along with people and create a peaceful solution, and people were not into nonviolence.
Right. Yeah, I watched the movie Ollie. I hadn't watched it when it came out, and I had, never really put the two kind of the Panther and the the nonviolence sort of side by side that it does in that movie. So it was really, really interesting. Do you? And then I just had the thought, going back to Impossible Dream. Maybe that song was a part of the inspiration of the I Have a Dream from the Impossible Dream. The song, maybe.
It could have been.
Could have been, right? I mean, maybe. Anyways, I'm not channeling anybody. Okay, but
so that was his song.
Yeah, because that is the wonderful inspirational words that he didn't fight. He didn't say, let's not do this, or it's a war against this, or a war against drugs, or whatever. He said the affirmative.
Right.
I have a dream, something inspirational. I always thought that was great.
And there's more where that came from, so keep it tuned here to Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome back. You are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Station, AM 1050, FM 102.3, and FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, iTunes, and more. And yes, this is the number one talk news station in the Inland Empire. And thanks to you, or no thanks to you, I am the 8 a.m. number one news talk show. And here's the rest of my spotlight interview with two people who intimately know Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to celebrate his day. So enjoy.
Now, do you, as a child, and as intuitive as I'm sure you were, did you pick up anything? Do you know if you said there were threats and there was a lot of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Did you sense that he knew that he had limited time?
Yeah, they used to tell us that they thought that they had limited time.
Okay.
And that my dad prepared us that, one day he might, not walk into the house anymore. And Medgar Evers had been killed in the driveway in 1963 in front of his children. So they wanted us to be prepared, and they wanted us to know that, death is possible, and what they were doing was incredibly dangerous, and that, but we had to do our part too, that we were answering God's call, and that we weren't all going to always live a long time. And my earliest knowledge of death was the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church, which will be the 50th anniversary this year. And so, first learning of children dying, you learn very early how precious life is. And then being Baptist ministers, when you're a minister and you're a pastor, you've got a congregation, people are constantly dying.
Right.
And so we went to funerals, and they talked about it. And then my parents' home was bombed. I mean, not just small, but bombed in a massive way before I was born. And I was in my mother's womb. I came out shaking. But, we used to go to bed at night and hug the wall because our bedroom was on the front, for fear that something, might happen. We might, die.
Right.
And so we understood. And then other people wouldn't let their kids come to visit and play with us because, they're like, if you go over to their house, you might get killed, bomb might go off. And so the only children we had to play with were the King children. I mean, we were literally going through the same thing. So, but yeah, they wanted us to understand that life is precious. And that's the thing that I think which made them such great fathers was the fact that the world outside was so violent and angry, and they were dealing with such big issues, so that when they would come home, their family time was quality time. And there was I didn't grow up with a whole bunch of yelling and screaming and all that. No, we didn't have that. Home was a safe haven because outside that door, you didn't know what you were going to encounter. And then they had us integrate the elementary schools in Atlanta at Spring Street Elementary, and everybody else followed suit. So then we went to school in a violent situation every day, children calling us names and this, that, and the other. And
that's got to be tough.
Well, yeah, and Daddy and Uncle Martin got on my sister and Yolanda because my sister gave this little girl a friendship ring, and she threw it down the toilet. And so on the lower field, my sister and Yoki went and sat on the girl because Yoki was bigger and held it down on the ground. And my sister was kicking dirt at her. Well, my dad got so upset. Uncle Martin got so upset. That was not practicing nonviolence. But when the girls came to fight me, I remember telling them, I'm nonviolent. I will not fight you. You want to fight me, you fight me. You hit me, I'll turn the other cheek. But, I was just practicing that rhetoric, and it made them so upset. And this little girl, her father was the Congressman Weltner. And his daughter, Susan, had tried to fight me. But, they were teaching us nonviolence is literally a way of life.
That's interesting.
It wasn't just rhetoric.
Right. It wasn't outside of the home, inside the home. That was one of the questions that I had, and I'm glad that you answered that, because that was one of my favorite parts of the movie. And apparently that was very, very realistic when they would practice in that Tennessee, right? Help me with the verbiage, Gerald. When they would practice and rehearse and role play.
Right. And they were doing that to prepare them for their activity in the movement, particularly students and young people, because we had a propensity for violence. We were ready. And I think had they sent them in without the proper preparation, without workshops and techniques and role playing and saying, this is what people are going to do and how are you going to respond? I think had they not been really prepared for what they were walking into, the results could have been very different. And for me, that speaks to the insight of the leaders of the movement. They said, we can't just tell them to do this and send them over there to do it. We've got to give them practical application and real tools to use and implement when they find themselves in a situation where they're facing violence.
Right.
Because it's one thing to talk about it. It's something else to literally turn the other cheek.
I watched that portion. I thought, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if someone came in my face and called me, and I grew up in a very small town in Canada, and that's my excuse for not being an expert on the American civil rights movement, but I'm getting better. But, I was made fun of as a child. I was the only non-white German in a very small town. We had one black family, one Chinese family, one Japanese family. And I was, cornered in stairwells, Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. And I didn't say anything, not because I was trained in nonviolence, peace through I didn't say anything because I was scared. So now that I'm not so scared, I don't know if I could. I mean, that really is something. It's a skill. It's not just, it's not easy.
We talk about it as learned behavior, but it really is returning to who we really are. We become conditioned to respond. I grew up in Compton, and, it was not a happy, nonviolent place by any stretch of the imagination. And I can remember my parents sort of passing on this tenet that says, if somebody hits you, then you hit them back. Because if you don't, then they're going to continue to beat you or abuse you. And it wasn't until I was an adult and began studying the words, works, and teachings of Dr. King. And initially, it took some time to put into practice and to be able to say, how am I going to really be able to respond? But I think, as she talked about, what happens on the inside of the house is what happens on the outside. It's the same with us as individuals. What happens on the inside of us as individuals is what will happen on the outside. So if you really, for me, having studied these words and these works for so long, there's no way I could continue to do this work and not make it a part of who I am and not find myself at one time or another in a situation where I'm being presented with violence and then I have a choice in that moment. And it's so brilliant when King talks about it, because he says by using this technique, it disarms the opponent, it exposes his moral defenses, it weakens his morale, and at the same time it's working on his conscience and he doesn't know what to do. And I experienced that in real life. He would say they would know what to do with violence. They know how to respond to that. They've been practicing that for hundreds and thousands of years. But when you introduce something that's different, they really don't know how to respond. People are stuck for a moment, and then they have to think about their own behavior. They have to think about, what am I doing as this person is sitting here receiving all of this? And some of them can inflict it for a little while, but over time, if that person standing on the other side continues to show love and compassion, and it's not... the challenge was, growing up, young people, even here in Compton and Los Angeles and LA, they thought of that as weak. But King teaches that this is not a weak choice. It's the strong man who can stand up amid violence being inflicted upon him and not retaliate with violence. It's the strong man who can hold his center and his peace while the world is sort of going crazy all around him.
Which is why we're doing this show now. At first, I wanted to wait until the season of nonviolence. And what I'm realizing more and more, it's not a season of nonviolence. It's a way of life of nonviolence. And that the good news is that we are shifting as a society, as a planet, and being more conscious about who we are and whose we are, and that we don't have to have, a month to celebrate anything. That if we are always valuing and always celebrating the good that we are and the nonviolence that we are and the peace that we are, then we don't need any more seasons.
Right.
which is really great. I'm going to ask Gerald to get into character right now, and we're so blessed to be able to celebrate. I think we just had the 50th year celebration of the I Have a Dream speech. Just so blessed to have you on the phone with us to give us an intimate look at what it was like growing up with Uncle Martin. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask Gerald to inspire us. And those of us listening, if you're not driving, just relax, take a deep breath, and listen to the words of peace.
I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize this shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was the promise that all men were created equal, were guaranteed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as its citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come here today to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. And we've also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valleys of racial segregation to the sunlit path of brotherhood. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there's an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hoped that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there's something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our quench thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
Yes.
The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. There are some white people here today as evidence who've come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny and their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge to always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who will ask in the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and hotels of the cities. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as there's a Negro in Mississippi who cannot vote, or a Negro in New York who believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I'm not unmindful that many of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you staggered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redempted. Go back to Alabama. Go back to Georgia. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that this situation can and will be changed. I say to you today, my friends, and so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. Hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream today that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today that one day my 4 little children will one day be able to live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into oases of freedom and human dignity. I have a dream today that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. And this is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee. The sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land of my father's pride. Land where the pilgrims died. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America's to become a great nation, this must become true. And so, let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiding Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring from every state and every city, from every village and every hamlet, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of that old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Beautiful. Wow.
That's beautiful.
Gerald. Wow.
Gorgeous.
Oh my God. I'm like crying. Hold on, I'm going to adjust the camera. Oh, I didn't realize you were going to stand up there. Oh, wow. Oh my God.
Wow.
That was just beautiful. My all the hair, I don't have a lot of hair, but all my hair on my arms is standing up. Thank you so much.
Gerald, that was amazing. That was just incredible. That's the best job I've ever heard of.
Wow. That's
ever.
Huge praise coming from.
That, I wanted to say even before, as I try to get back into my body here,
yeah,
that it's
take a breath.
such an honor And I just feel so blessed to be even in your radio voice presence.
Oh my
because
God.
with all
I feel the same way about you. Oh my God, what was it like to be in the studio to do that? Please tell us. I mean, that takes
it was
so
amazing.
And I hope you feel this special day of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his day, his life, and may we practice the nonviolent peace, love, and understanding that his life work was all about. So remember, it's all about balance. Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. Go forth and multiply the peace that you are, and have the best day ever.